We're going to go through the VADIS workflow. You're going to start in the Your Stake application. So before we jump into the keystrokes of this, I just want to kind of set the story or set the stage with a little bit of a story. So let's pretend that I'm the advisor in this use case. So I'm an advisor. I've just met my prospect. We'll name them Pat Prospect. They've been investing for the past couple decades. They expressed a desire to align their investments with their values, and they had assumed that their portfolio, which was being managed elsewhere, was aligned to their values. But after reviewing their most recent brokerage statement, just want to see if they can do better. So I've offered to review their current portfolio and ask Pat what their values are. Is that more human rights, environmental stewardship, maybe it's religion, or are there any activities that you want to avoid in the portfolio or to incorporate into the investment portfolio? Pat responded with sharing their current statement with me and said that they were hoping I could help them identify what their values preferences are. Because they invest in companies that are good to the planet and people, but they're not exactly sure what they want to do from there. So not being an investment manager myself, and I know that there's some good funds out there for many different values, but for this specific client, they really want to be dialed in. So a stock portfolio seems like the route to go. I let the client know that I'm confident I can help them identify their values and incorporate those values into their investment portfolio. So to discover Pat's values, together, we'll take the Your Stake Behavioral Values questionnaire, as it's non-judgmental, there's no right or wrong answers, but it really helps to identify what the individual cares about, not just for myself as the advisor, but also for the individual as well. So coming into Your Stake, and now is where we kind of put in all of the information. So starting a new journey, I've just got to put some basic information in. And starting the approximate primary account value. And then choosing the appropriate custodian. There are 3 to choose from. As Teresa mentioned earlier, for accounts that are 25,000 to 250,000, we've got these little nice sort of guidelines here. I'm going to choose Schwab on this one. And then the account registration type, I'm just going to choose as individual. All of this information that we're going to collect here will be important at the end, and you'll see why. So taking the behavioral values questionnaire. I won't go through this entire questionnaire just because it is 16 questions long, but I do want to show a few of the questions just so you can get a flavor of what the questions, kind of how they read, how they're constructed. This questionnaire is really great for increasing dialogue with your prospect or your client as well. A lot of times during this sort of survey or taking the questionnaire, you'll find some little nuggets of additional information about the prospect or the client, and that's just kind of an added bonus. So this first question, I go out of my way to reduce environmental footprint, and Pat has said that they strongly agree. Companies should pay workers a living wage, and even if that means employing fewer people, they agree with that as well. Human lives are more important than animal lives. They'll be neutral on that one, though they've got several dogs. They'll just stay neutral. I go out of my way to avoid products linked to forced labor, i.e. sweatshops. They admit that they could maybe do a little bit better, but generally they agree with that. Prisons effectively deter crime. They disagree. So we've seen a few of these different questions kind of and how you can answer them. And Your Stake is doing some mapping on the back end. So depending on how the client answers this questionnaire, they will then be matched to one of several, or if not more, personas that we at Your Stake have pre-created. So going back to just kind of go through that workflow, we'll say that this client had matched to our Planet Protector category, our Women in Power Work category, and Racial Equity Advocate, just based on the way that they answered those 16 questions. So from that, we may want to view or review if there's anything else that can or should be incorporated into the portfolio. How can we get even more specific, or how can we fine tune these values? So clicking on fine tune, now me as the advisor can see there's a lot more issues out there that may be more appropriate for this particular client. And I can go through and look at all of the different categories that Your Stake offers in terms of what kind of metrics or what values can I choose to include in this client's value set. So maybe we want to grab a couple in the health category, or more in the environmental category, or the environmental equal opportunity categories as well. So I've added a couple more. Then we can save this value set, and now they have a custom value set. So they care about 22 specific metrics or 22 issues that are really important to them. If I need to include or exclude specific companies, we just enter those ticker symbols in there. And that can be for a number of reasons, whether they just don't want the company represented in their portfolio, or maybe they already own a lot of it. So you can input those ticker symbols down here. And now going to the next page, we can select the appropriate benchmark of risk. And this is where you can do a couple of things. You could take the Orion Risk Intelligence questionnaire, and once they've completed that, you'll come back into the Your Stake site and select the appropriate benchmark here. Now, with this particular prospect, just through organic conversation and maybe my own risk tolerance discovery, they have landed on being somewhere in that moderately aggressive range. So I've selected that there. And then for the last step here, we can just review real quickly the client's information, if there were any specific exclusions or inclusions, the account size, the registration, and of course, their custom value set. And now I just submit it. And all of that information that we collected in these 4 steps gets transmitted to First Affirmative. And they'll utilize all of that information when they start building the customized portfolio. I do have one final step, and that is Pat Prospect had sent me their current brokerage statement for review. So what I have done utilizing the Your Stake portfolio and sort of analysis and proposal tool is I've uploaded their PDF, and I've now got a spreadsheet of those holdings that I can use elsewhere. I've got a general sort of breakdown of what's going on in the portfolio, but most importantly, First Affirmative will now have all of this information. So they'll be able to take any tax transition or tax management into consideration as well as they construct the portfolio. As Teresa mentioned earlier, of course, if you want a full demo of this, please reach out to me. But lastly, before I hand this over to Teresa, you've now probably seen that the values identification, portfolio analysis have all happened in less than 20 minutes. Most of that time would have been spent with the prospect or the client helping them to identify or learn what their values are. So what I, as an advisor, prefer to do, and what I, like many of you, didn't have quite as much time this year, would have liked to spend that time with serving my current clients, or meeting with prospects. All I started with was this prospect's current brokerage PDF. We went through the questionnaire together to find their values. And now I have a really nice way to utilize VADIS to win this prospect faster. So Teresa, with that, I'm going to go ahead and send it back over to you so you can talk a little bit more about you and your team's sort of methodology, or the process that you go through to create those customized portfolios.